Jamm, and Jamm is sort of a very lightweight video collaboration application for remote and distributed teams. And what we're essentially trying to do is to have this experience between Slack and Zoom, where you can have these friction-free, light-touch, collaborative experiences with your team in a way where you can stay connected and sort of collaborate. And essentially, we're trying to bring back sort of the human and social elements to real-time collaboration. And I was just starting, Megan.
No, thank you. And sorry for the technical difficulty there. Nothing a good refresh of the screen won't fix. Real quick, I'm Megan Dilley. I'm the director of the Remote Work Association. Super happy to be here with you today, Badri. Thank you for joining us. And thanks for that intro. Talk to us a bit about the genesis of Jamm and what are the large problems you're trying to solve?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things which Laurel had spoke about in the introduction really hit home to me as well. To some degree, my own background was in a previous role managing a sort of a large remote and distributed team that is spread across 10 cities and 7 time zones. And to some degree, the genesis of Jamm came about through a couple of observations. I think the first observation is that the modern workplace is incredibly noisy in terms of unstructured text data, right? Whether it's stream of consciousness conversations that's happening in Slack, or whether it's a whole bunch of common threads on GitHub, it's an incredibly noisy environment. And one of the observations we had was people think that you can just slap process on top of it and drive organizational alignment. And almost what you need is sort of the opposite. You want a mechanism to be able to rise above that noise and quickly collaborate and get into alignment. And so that's why we thought like audiovisual elements could play a super interesting sort of role. And the second observation was mostly around culture and being intentional about culture and building that sort of trust. Lauren was talking about how this is super hard, and being remote is sometimes you feel very lonely and you have this feeling of sort of being disconnected from the mothership. And I think that's mostly because workplace applications don't emphasize human interactions in a way we are used to in our social and consumer lives, right? And so that got us around to thinking, what does collaboration for teams look like in sort of the in the TikTok, for the TikTok house party generation, right? Can we use technology to build sort of much more human experiences for people to be able to build that trust and camaraderie by having the short, friction-free micro interactions with their teams? And so that was sort of the genesis of what we tried to solve with Jamm.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I know you gave me an amazing demo of the platform, and it's a lot of fun. And I know you're going to be adding a link to a demo in the chat, so people can go ahead and watch that later, play around and have fun with it. So I completely agree with you. Being intentional and deliberate about culture is so important. Talk to me about specific ways Jamm is addressing this, and what's currently missing in today's workplace apps.
Yeah, we come at it from a couple of angles, and I think one of our users said it the most succinctly. They were like, we're not trying to run more efficient meetings. We're actually trying to get work done in between meetings, right? And this is sort of a lived reality for all of us, where we're just hopping from video conference to video conference, and it can be particularly sort of unproductive and sort of not very pleasant. And so what we really wanted to do is to say, hey, how can we build this light touch, friction-free experiences that let you collaborate and actually get work done? And so Jamm solves it with a couple of ways. We enable these lightweight spaces where you can quickly jump in and out of conversations to have those short, bursty conversations and collaborative moments with your team. And the video itself is just a bunch of talking heads that float around and follow you around so that you can focus on what you're doing rather than the video call itself. And so I think this entire friction-free, light touch, micro interaction and live calls with Jamm enables. Another important angle which we solve is sort of a whole bunch of asynchronous audio video messaging component to it as well, which is, for instance, you could record a video message and it's almost like Instagram stories for work. You could send like your asynchronous status updates. You could do stand-ups. In fact, I do all of my metrics walkthrough and all hands updates over recorded audio, video, and recorded screen sharing. And so I think that's a strong component where we think it's particularly relevant in sort of remote teams. And finally, we've done interesting ways to think through presence and how we can expose presence in sort of nuanced ways where you feel connected with your team, but at the same time, you don't have this burden of having to feel like you have to always be on. And so I think some of those modalities are missing in the workplace today. And if you actually think about FaceTime in the workplace, it's literally sitting in a video conference for 60 minutes, bored out of your wits, to give you a 5 minutes update of what have you, right? Like we want it to be much more fluid, lightweight, and friction-free.
I love it. And I think one of the big things I noticed in using the platform was that, it incorporated all of these sort of that people are using, right, into a single place, which is incredible. And it was fun to use. It wasn't distracting, and it felt like something I would use, as a consumer, right? And not necessarily just something I would use during the workday. And I absolutely love that can help bridge that gap between that work and life balance, making everything more dynamic. It was just a lot of fun. Talk to us a bit more about asynchronous and the role that's playing in remote teams, and where you think that's going.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I keep getting asked a lot in terms of, hey, is the future of remote work synchronous, or is the future of remote work asynchronous? And I think there are strong arguments in either ways. But when you actually think about communication apps, and I think that's a separate category, I'm very opinionated about the fact that both synchronous versus asynchronous is sort of a false dichotomy, right? We don't jump on Slack and say, hey, am I going to text you synchronously but live, or am I going to text you asynchronously? I'm just going to text you. If you're live, you respond. If you're not there, you respond later on, right? So we think that entire dichotomy is sort of false. And so what we want to do is to say, hey, it's about unlocking the power of audio and video to express yourself and have these collaborative moments of magic. And you choose the modality that makes sense to you, right? And whatever your workflow happens to be. And I think, but on the other hand, I would say this, with our current unfortunate working from home situation and what all of us are going through, people's schedules are like haywire, right? I always say availability is not the same as attention. And I think it's all the more important for companies, for leaders, for people working in remote teams to be respectful and thoughtful of people's schedules and how fluid they are. And I think given that sort of fluidity of schedules in terms of how we are working, I think asynchronous plays a very important role, right? As an example, our team in Jamm is spread across 4 cities, which is San Francisco, Perth, Barcelona, and Sydney. And we literally can come together online at the same time for only 60 minutes a day, right? That's it. And so the kind of teams we have, a large part of the workflow have to be asynchronous. And I think it's got to be a good blend of synchronous and asynchronous is what we believe in.
Absolutely. And so you guys are 100% distributed?
100% hyper distributed.
And have you been that way from day one?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So we are spread across, from day one. It's almost as if we took like a world map and said, what's the worst possible airplane route? And said, we're going to build a founding team across those cities. And it's literally one person in each city in crazy time zones. And we just had somebody join from Dublin. So that's like 5 people in 5 cities. And I think it's kind of an interesting, we're crazy that way because we live that hyper remote and distributed dream. But in a way, it's sort of, it's been super interesting for us because it's sort of forced us to confront the day-to-day lived reality of, I think Laurel said this in her introduction, which is it's not just about working remote, it's how do you build remotely? How do you build a product with a hyper distributed team? And, we've solved a lot of problems in terms of how we think what works for us. And that's essentially what we've tried to enable with Jamm.
That's awesome. Okay, we're getting close here to the end of our session. I think it's time for the next session. Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for being with us, Badri. We have a question that came in that maybe we can answer a bit later. We'll make sure to record that.
All right. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you.